Hello, dear friends. This is Grandma Jeannie. Welcome back to my workshop. You know, it's all fun and games to go on road trips and to pick up cute little doll houses and fun little dollhouse furniture, or get those great packages in the mail and open them up. That's so much fun. But tonight we're going to get back to the basics. We're going to get a house rehabbed. It's this one right behind me. Let's take a closer look at it. Here is this pretty house that we are going to work on. Now, this is the biggest house that was made by Marks. It is called the Marksy House, or I like to call it the Marksy Mansion, because it is their biggest house. Now, there is another house that is the same size and shape with the same interior, but it had a couple of little bit fancier features to it, and sometimes people call that the Marksy Mansion. But I think it's an appropriate term for both of these houses because they are so close in design to each other. Now, this house you could get it with, I think sometimes it came with the awnings, or you could buy them separate, and the awnings came in different colors. These particular awnings are replacements. They were made by taking pictures of actual original awnings, and then I printed those out on to like photography paper. They look exactly like the originals because they were taken by photographing the actual original awnings, but these are actually made of paper, so they're a nice addition. They're a lot of fun. The house is very nice on the outside. We'll turn it around in a minute and I'll show you what needs to be done on the other side of the house. This house was originally red, and you can tell because if you look up here under the eaves, see how that's pinkish? Well, it was originally red, but apparently it was exposed to the sun enough that it's faded to a nice light. It's a very light khaki, might look like a light green or light gray on the screen, but it's a very pale tan color, so it looks very nice. It's faded very evenly all the way across. It's got the original door that opens and shuts, very nice. And the only thing I might do is here where the tabs are, there's a little bit of discoloration in there. I'll probably touch that up just so they're not dark colored. There's several of them, those that look that way. Now here's the inside of the house, and it's also in pretty good condition. Very nice, very little rust or damage. There's a few little dark spots here on the living room floor. We'll touch those up. There's some fading here. This floor was originally red, and you can see it's faded to an orange, red orange, and up here maybe a yellow or gold. I may leave that. It would require a complete repaint if I wanted to repaint it, it's really not too bad the way it is. The only other issue is this patio is a little bit bent. I don't know, can you tell there's a little bit of warp in there? So I want to straighten that, and there's a few little rust spots up there. And also there's a few little spots on the roof I'll touch up. But overall, it's in really nice condition. I want to tell you where I got this house. I got this when I was on vacation in Minnesota. I took a short vacation in Minnesota, and I checked out their local Facebook marketplace, and the lady had this for sale. So I went ahead and picked it up and bought it, and brought it back to my home in Des Moines, Iowa. And I've had it a while, and it's time to get it cleaned up and get it moved on. Number one, it needs cleaned, and I like to use Awesome Cleaner. I spray right on my paper towel, and I use paper towels, spray it right on my paper towel. I don't spray liquid in my house because I don't want to take a chance that moisture will get caught anywhere and leave it rusty. This is actually Awesome Cleaner from the Dollar Tree. You can also use something like 409, anything that's a non-sudsy cleaner. When you put it on your paper towel, don't use too much liquid and don't rub too hard. You really can wash these graphics off, and that's too bad when they're in as nice a condition as this. And I wash every surface, all the walls, the floors, the ceilings, up under the roof, the top of the roof. This house is not filthy, but it could use a little benefit from a nice cleaning. Here's my warning: if it's a house you've not worked on, a brand you've not worked on, or a cleaner you've not used before, you will want to do a sample first. So a sample, you would do it up under the roof or underneath the bottom, and make sure that the cleaner doesn't make the surface tacky or sticky or remove the paint. Okay, I've washed it all off, and usually, predictably, the roof was the dirtiest part. The rest of it needed a cleaning, but, I didn't see anything very dirty, or it benefited from a good cleaning. All the surfaces have been cleaned. The only thing I need to do yet now is to take this chimney off, because it's always very dirty under the chimney. Plus, if and when I ship this, if I sell it and ship it, you can ship it in a smaller box, which saves on shipping costs with that off. So let's get that chimney off, and we'll wash underneath it. and then we'll know every surface has been cleaned. I got it off, and let me cover those steps with you so you know how to do that if you ever want to do it. I took my steak knife from my set of silverware. Now I like it because it's sturdy and it's pointed, but it's not super sharp. I'm unlikely to cut myself when I use it. And I get it up in there under the, up here inside the roof in the ceiling, and I pry those tabs down, and once I get them started, I can use my fingers to straighten those out enough and then just pull it up off of there. And I'm glad I did, because it's pretty dirty under there. Let me see if I can give you a shot of what it looks like. There you go. It's just dirty on the front and on the back of the roof, so we'll get that good and clean underneath there. That way I can double check and make sure there's like no bugs or anything in there or anything like that. And it's nice and clean now. As I cleaned this house, I made note of the few places that need straightened. And one of them is right here along the roof, and I like to show you. I use a piece of hardwood floor to do that. So you can see, if I put that up there, I think you can see that there's like a gap in here. And if I put it this way, again, you can see the gap here. So what I'll do is use my hardwood floor. This is just left over from when we did our living room. You could use like a 2x4, and I'll put it up under here, and then I'll pound along the edge to get that straightened or the way I want it. If I need to, I'll put it this way, and I'll pound it this way. Now this is a rubber hammer. Looks like metal, but it is rubber. And then the other thing I'll need to do is work on this patio over here. This is going to be a little harder to do. I don't know if I'll have to take the house apart, but this patio is kind of caved in all the way. So it probably needs to go like this, and then pound in from underneath. And that is what I will try to do. I'm going to do that off of camera because it's pretty noisy. All right, I can't resist showing you this. I've done the patio and a couple other areas, and it's getting so good. I have this house upside down now. So this is the roof, this inside of the roof, and I've got my hardwood there under the edge, and you can see that gap I'm talking about. So if I pound right there, I should be able to get that back into shape. That's a lot better than it was, but I'm going to set it up, and then I'm going to try to hammer down from the top, because I think right there's a bump that needs to be hammered the other way. I've never hammered from this angle before, but I'm going to try it. Here's the roof, and here's that kink that I think needs hammered. There's my hardwood, so right here's the peak of that. So I'm going to try to hammer it that way, see if I can get that kink out a little bit. That is so much better. I think that's where I'm going to leave it. And I want to show you this patio real quick, because it is also so much better. Look, nearly perfect. I'm ready for my favorite part. We're going to touch up the paint on this house. The reason it's my favorite part is I tend to do it last, usually, and it's like putting the frosting on the cake. You've got your beautiful cake, and now you're going to make it extra pretty, and that's what we're going to do with this. And this house needs very little paint, as I said before. There's a few spots here we're going to touch up, and just a few other here and there, and a couple spots up on the roof and on the patio, which I will probably do a close-up for you just so you can see the before and after. But let me cover the basics of painting in case you've not watched me before. I use acrylic craft paint. I use different brands. Here's one of the brands, and you buy this at Hobby Lobby or Michael's, or sometimes I've seen it at Walmart. I have even bought bottles of it on Amazon. If I didn't want to go out shopping, you can buy them right on Amazon. I use a palette. In this case, I've got a piece of cardboard that I've covered with freezer paper. And freezer paper is nice because it's got a little bit of plastic on it, so the paint won't get absorbed down into the cardboard. And when I'm done with it, I can throw it away because it's just cardboard. I put some dots of paint on there. I've got an off-white, I've got black, I've got brown, and I've got yellow, because there's a little bit of a pale yellow spot here that could use a little tiny paint on it. I usually start with the Dollhouse white, with the whites first. And usually a Dollhouse white is a light tan. But on this house, I don't know that there's anything white that needs painted. So I'll probably move right on to the very first color. Let me see, is there a little spot there? There might be a little spot there. This little off-white might work on that. Now here's the trick to acrylic paint. First of all, it is water soluble. If you don't like it, you can wipe it off. If you have bare metal, you will probably need to do more than one coat. If the first coat doesn't match, then don't worry about it. Adjust your color and do a second coat right over that. And keep repeating that until you get a good match. The other thing you need to know about acrylic paint is if you don't like it, you can wipe it off. Use a damp cloth when it's wet and wipe it off. And even when it's dry, it will wipe off pretty easily. You'd have to rub a little harder. The other thing is it tends to dry darker than it is when you put it on. So if it goes on and it looks a little light, give it a few minutes, let it dry, and then look at it again. If it turned a little bit too dark, do a second coat, mix it on your palette, make your dot a little bit lighter, and do another coat. And don't stress about it. A lot of times the first coat, I will just use a white or an off-white and just see, cover. These spots are kind of dark. Just see how that covers. And sometimes I just dot that on there and then kind of wipe it off. And honestly, you'd be surprised on some of these little dots. That sometimes is just all it takes. But, if I need to go over that with a little bit of gray, I will. But, I mean, really, it is looking pretty good. I've been touching up these shingles, and I'm done with this half of the roof, so I'll turn it around and do the other half. But I had a couple of things I wanted to share with you. First of all, when you do these shingles or the patio blocks I was doing, they are a variety of light and dark colors. So when you paint, you don't want to paint just a solid blob of dark gray or a solid blob of light gray, because the natural painting, the way this was painted, for instance, you can see how dark this one is, and then these are lighter. Well, that's the original paint. And shingles kind of come that way in real life. They're not just flat color, especially like in the sunlight. So as I paint, I try to be aware of that. And I try to keep on my palette maybe a light area and then a darker area. And gray is one of those colors that'll dry a little darker. So as it gets dry, if something looks outstanding and not right, I will fix it. The other thing is I went through and these tabs, a lot of the tabs were white originally. And in order to help them blend in with the roof, I have painted them gray to match whatever shingles next to it. Just makes it look a little better, actually a little better than new. The other thing I've never talked about is kind of like the consistency of your paint. And it's okay to start with either a thin coat, a very thin coat, a watery coat, or you can start with a more solid coat. Either way is fine. But as you do your final correction on your color, is you might want to do a thinner coat. So add a drop of water. And I just get one out of my cup. I've got a cup over here I use to rinse my brush in. And I just grab a drop out of there. I might tap it to the side so I don't get too much water. Then I'll put it in my pile. But you'll find that a thin coat can be a very nice way to get your final color correction. Also, sometimes I'll go back and kind of put like highlights or lowlights. So now I've got a very thin light color, and I'm going back and just adding a little bit of light color on top of those to make it look more natural, because these shingles are not like a solid blob of color. They have a little light and dark to them. Okay, I'm going to flip it around and do the other side, and when I get done, I will show you the final product. There you go, dear friends. It is done. I've touched up everything on it I thought needed touched up. It looks so much better. It looks really, really good. Now I'm going to take this downstairs, and I'll take some pictures of it in a little better light so you can get a good look at it. So come back and check that out. And I will also check the paint color matches in the daylight to make sure it's a good match. I think it is, but I'll double check it. And I'm going to post a few before and after pictures here for you. Now, I said this house is done, but that's not exactly true, because as long as I own this house, if I see a little spot that could use a little bit of paint, I will absolutely do that. I'll just continue to work on it to make it as good as I can. Although I do think I'm done, you just never know. I may find something else to touch up. In the meantime, thanks so much for joining me. Remember, Grandma Jeannie loves you.